Hi, everyone. Welcome to Junket. I'm Evan Schwartz, and today I have a truly fascinating guest. This is the director of Darko, Chris Fisher. I wanted to do this interview, one, because I genuinely like Darko, which I know is a radical thing to say, and I really don't expect anyone to get on my wavelength here. But I do think if you divorce it from your affinity for Donnie Darko, there's a lot in there that is really effective. I kind of have a thing for sequels that artfully or not so artfully desecrate their predecessor. And I think Darko does so in a very successful and sometimes unsuccessful way. It works as a mood piece of kind of wandering through listless Americana. And I think it does have some of the DNA of the original film. It's not a sequel that was necessary, but it exists, so it's something to contend with. Interviewing Chris was a treat because it really is a rare opportunity to hear from someone who made a film that they're not necessarily proud of. Chris has no illusions that he made a great film. In fact, he thought me reaching out to him about this interview was a prank. I think even if you hate this film or haven't seen this, you'll find it to be an interesting discussion. So anyway, here's my chat with Chris Fisher, and I hope you enjoy. Hello, Chris. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So first of all, I just kind of want to speak about your career. I'm very curious what your entry point was into cinema.
Okay. Yeah. Sort of spiritually, emotionally, I grew up. I moved to Saudi Arabia when I was in first grade and lived there until sixth grade, until right before I started junior high. And when you live back in the 80s, when Americans live over there, you live in these walled off compounds. And one of the drawbacks is there's no American television or film or anything. You're not allowed to have any. You're very because of the religion and the culture, you're not allowed to have any, access to American TV shows. So, every once in a while, a parent would sneak in some comic books, and we played a lot of D&D, but I had no access to American TV shows or movies. So when I came back to the States, I saw pretty much, I'd seen a movie when I was in kindergarten. I didn't really remember it. I think I saw Rocky when I was in kindergarten, and I kind of remember, but not really. But I came back to the States, and the first thing I did is went to the Big Edwards in Newport Beach and saw Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, and like Tina Turner fucking in that silver outfit, just belting those tunes. I just had no idea life could be so grand. I had no idea anything could be so wonderful as that. And I just was hooked on movies forever. That was my kind of reintroduction to cinema, and got a job, lied about my age when I was 11, said I was, I think, 13. Yeah, that's how old you had to be. Or no, I was 12, and I think I had to say I was 14 to get a job at Edward, to start working at Edwards Theaters as an usher, tearing tickets, cleaning theaters, selling popcorn. And it was just the best job still to this day I've ever had, the best experience, the best memories I've ever had. And we had all the great movies every summer. It was just a great, that was my cinema paradiso, the way I fell in love with cinema and the life that it offered me, and the escape from I actually had a reverse culture shock a little bit. I'd moved from Saudi Arabia, moved back to Newport Beach. So I was like in Orange County. I was like, this is so fucking boring. Like, I wish I was, on the Persian Gulf in a catamaran chasing mako sharks, or I wish I was out in the desert with a hawk flying. So it was, the cinema and movies gave me this great escape from into a life that I wanted to lead. Technically speaking, I went to USC to study film. Ended up falling in love with philosophy, ended up falling in love with law, and after graduating law school, then found my way back into film. And kind of like most people, I started off working in the mailroom. I worked at the mailroom at William Morris and worked my way up. Finally sold my first script when I think I was 28, then made my first movie when I was 29. That was a movie called Taboo. That was at Sundance, and then made my second movie, Night Stalker, when I think I was like 30, 31, and that played also at Sundance. So that kind of got my film career started. So yeah, that's kind of, those are my sort of, I guess, my two launching pads into cinema.
Do you enjoy the process of making a movie? Because I know it's so painful and arduous and yet can be fun. What do you think about the process?
I think you have to absolutely love it. I think I love it more than anything else. I mean, my daughter excluded. And even that's probably sometimes I wonder. Yeah, everything about it. I mean, I think, I've always wanted to be in the circus. I've always wanted to run away with the circus. And I've always wanted to live a life that is absolutely unorthodox and extraordinary. And making movies is the closest thing I know to do it. So every second of it, every moment of it is fantastic, and is exactly what I want. And I pine for it when I'm not doing it. And sure, it's hard work, but it's, that's definitely the wrong frame or perspective to have on it. It's really the best thing that anyone could ever do, being in a collaborative art form with talented, cool people, especially being out on location, doing something together, and telling a story together, and a story that people love to make together. It's just the best thing ever.
Can you name like a few people or films that kind of inspired you or to this day are still kind of your foundational films?
Oh God. Well, obviously, George Miller and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, that started me all the Mad Max films. Ridley for sure, and Blade Runner, and even Denis Blade Runner, his version, that was awesome. Oh God, it's so hard. I mean, my not to sound pretentious, but yeah, it just really ranges. There's a movie, Santa Sangra, which is a movie that really inspired me and kind of shook me out of my sense of normalcy and what cinema could do. Blue Velvet shook me. I'd say it's mostly movies that surprised and shook me, then said, "Oh my God, I didn't know cinema could do this." Irreversible by Gaspar Noé. Nolan's Batman. I mean, I could think about this, I could go on and on, but yeah, I'd say like the movies that stick with me are movies that you know good or bad is not the thing, is like how they moved me, they shook me, they made me think of cinema in a totally different way. And made me think that, oh fuck, I have so much to learn, so much left to do to get to this level. Always feeling like the drive to become better, and to learn from my peers is something that watching great movies does.
For sure. So then as Darko,
Yeah.
so I have a lot of questions about kind of how this came about. So did
Yeah.
you see Donnie Darko and love it and say, I have a take, or did somebody approach you about this? How did this all come about?
Yeah. So yes, I saw Donnie Darko, and yes, I loved it. Um, but no, I did not have a take or approach on it. I had made a couple movies for a producer named Ash Shaw, and Ash was one of the original producers on Donnie Darko. And I had just made a movie with Ash called Dirty, which was a pretty fun movie. Cuba Gooding, Cole Hauser, Clifton Collins. So it was like kind of a down and dirty LA noir film. And so then Ash approached me and said, "Hey, we have the rights to Donnie Darko for a sequel. is that something that you would be interested in? And I said, sure. Well, what, tell me a little bit more about the project. And then that was sort of the beginning of that process.
I see. So do you know why they wanted to do a sequel? Because it was such a standalone movie. So why did they want to continue it? Especially without Richard Kelly, right? He didn't want to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Richard never reached out to me. I don't, and I've never spoken to Richard. Uh, had he reached out to me or had he contacted me, I would have loved to hear his take and opinion on it. But I don't know any of that backstory, if he passed on it or if he was offered it or he didn't want to do it. I think he would be the right guy to answer those questions. I mean, certainly making sequels is not unheard of. And there's examples of it done well. Irwin Kershner and Empire Strikes Back was not a bad movie. And then there's versions of sequels that are done less well. And I think the external response to S. Darko was certainly the latter. But I don't know. I never heard from Richard, never heard from him or anyone on his team, producer agents, on whether he was offered it first or he passed or anything like that. So when it came to me, it was already a script, and it was already focused on Samantha, the David Chase character. So who developed that and how that got to that place, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as sequels go, honestly, I don't think Donnie Darko ever needed a sequel, but
Yeah,
and I think that's why the reaction to S. Darko is kind of like before it's even made, it's like already kind of reviled. But
right.
I think there is so much in there that is so creative and actually does stay true to Donnie Darko's vibe. And I think it's very unfair that people have not given this film a fair shake. And I think it's kind of time to discover it as genuinely like a very fascinating film. So, yeah, I guess why did you feel like you wanted to direct it? And I
Yeah,
guess what was kind of your intention with it?
yeah. Well, let me take a step back. I think you're right. I think the study and the reaction to S. Darko is really something. It's really a really interesting kind of sociocultural sort of snapshot of that time too, where the internet was at that time, what types of people were on the internet, um, how cult movies were distributed, how they were seen. I mean, like, it like, and this is a whole different conversation. And it's really an interesting one. I don't want to side us through, but how streaming works now versus how cult films used to work in, art house theaters at midnight. And then, the success of Donnie Darko is really the story of the success of video and DVD. Like, it's just how people found it, and they found it like kids found Donnie Darko, after it didn't do well in the box office. People found it like they find a secret band, or they find a secret song, or they find a poem. They found it, and they felt that it spoke to them so personally, and they fell in love with it, and they cherished it, and they protected it, and they felt like, I think kids in school who loved Donnie Darko, that was like, those were the kids that parked in the back parking lot and were smoking cloves and doing their own thing. And I think, again, I really feel like it was so much more than a movie to these people, which is what great cinema does, and what Richard did so incredibly with that film. And And so yeah, I think there's a really interesting way to look at success of Donnie Darko, the reaction to it, and the success or failure of S. Darko and the reaction to it, and sort of as like a touchstone of that time period, how how cult films worked and how people fell in love with it. It's really fascinating, and it's worthy of thought that I haven't given it to it right now. Um, but I think I think you're smart to bring that up, and there's something more to be said there for sure. I fell in love with Donnie Darko and Richard's film, like I did a graphic novel, and I felt it was the voice of teenage male angst, the point of view of Jake's point of view and the way he's told this story was so personal to how I felt at that age. It spoke to me, um, and so when I first read the first script of S. Darko, I said, "Wow, this is the this is the fairy tale version. This is the female version. This is the teenage girls version of this. This is this magical realist, sort of softer, feminine, again, like fairy tale. This is not a graphic novel. This is not Donnie. This is a fairy tale." So and obviously I love magical realism and love fairy tales, and that's why I did the show The Magicians for 5 years. And so that's how I saw it. That was like my launching board. That was like, so and obviously from watching S. Darko, you can see I loved what Richard did with the camera and with visuals and sort of the missing scene and stuff like that. And so I didn't want the movie to look different, like again, like I don't think Empire Strikes Back looks different than Star Wars. And I think so. I thought like, well, it makes sense to keep it in the same visual language, and but let's tell a female oriented version of this story. Let's tell it from a feminine point of view, and let's tell a fairy tale, but let's set it in the same sort of cinematic world. And that was that's sort of in a nutshell, that was my what got me interested enough in the project to sign on as a director.
I see. Yeah, because it is different and also very truthful to the original. I think in terms of this one centers around grief and kind of wandering through this world that these girls are kind of stuck in and trying to get out of. I think it's I think it's just a beautiful film.
For me, certainly the Lost, we shot in Utah in the American desert and in the Southwest, and South Southwest, but the sort of that part of Utah is the mountain areas. It's very magical, very cool, but something about just there's this sort of, obviously, this sort of road movie sensibility, which is a little bit different than Donnie. We kind of put him out on the American highway and had him got lost in the sort of the expanse of Americana, and so it visually, I think that was another angle that we applied to it. But yeah, these sort of really, Samantha's story, Devee's role was, which she's such an crazy, powerfully emotional human being and actor, is just the sense of being lost and not having a path and being haunted by pain and suffering and wanting to find a way to move on, but constantly being pulled back into grief, and pulled back into loss, and how do you let go of that and move on with your life, and that was sort of her question to be answered, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Did you pull from any of the kind of classic surrealist directors, like especially David Lynch? Because I feel like this is a very Lynchian film.
I mean, not I mean, I guess I probably always do. Um, you know, the movie I mentioned, Santa Sangra, is also very surrealist. Earlier, but I mean, I mean, I didn't intentionally do so, but I'm sure my brain is always being pushed by that. I don't direct. I don't reference a lot of other films and filmmakers when I'm trying to direct. I'm also a writer, so I try to actually spend more time looking at not cinema when I'm working on a project to try to get references and influences and emotions from the setting I'm in. I go to the location. I moved out there many weeks before, just wandered around the Salt Lake of Utah, wandered around the mountains, spent time at those motels and stuff. I try not to make movies when I'm constantly referencing my heroes, and the apart from Richard's movie. I mean, we and I'd be naive to say I'm not aware of Richard's reaction to it, and I always felt terrible about that, because I mean our intention was to honor the film and to pay homage to the film, and I think you can tell by just looking at the way it was shot, and certain shots where we even paid homage literally. We tried our best to do that, but that's a whole different take. And especially now, I was funny, I was thinking of when you had reached out to me, I was thinking about just authorship a little bit, and what makes what we owe each other as a fraternity of filmmakers. I think right now, with what's going on with AI, you look at, it's one thing doing a sequel, but I don't know if you saw that um oh shit, that Black Mirror episode, with Salma Hayek plays the girl, and everyone's a sequel, and it's sort of like, we're getting into really interesting issues, not just sequels, but we're getting into really interesting issues of kind of not just legal rights, right? Not just legality of, did I have the legal right to make the sequel? Sure. And no one did anything, at least that I'm aware of, no one did anything underhanded to Richard or anyone else. So like there was no, and there wasn't anything subversive in how the project was offered to me or anything like that. But do we owe each other? Are there moral rights? Are there ethical rights? So what do we, when you're, what is, what, when we, what, in the pantheon of storytelling, and especially of continuing narrative, sharing narrative between authors, what do we owe each other? I'm after S. Darko, not I wouldn't say I got put in director jail by S. Darko, but my film career was going like this, and then it kind of definitely tapered off, if not took a slight nosedive. So I jumped into television, and I've had this wonderful career in television. And in television, of course, you have 22 episodes and you have 22 directors, and you're all telling the same story. So it's a totally different vibe and atmosphere of collaboration, and maybe I really like that. Maybe some other filmmakers really wouldn't like television because of that. But all these things are coming to a head right now with AI, and I think it was funny to think, I made Das Darko almost 20 years ago now. So, when you reached out to interview me, I was like, I got to meet the only guy in the world who liked Das Darko. I mean, I just have to fucking meet this guy. This is probably a prank. This may still be a prank, and I don't know, but I was just curious to meet you. But it did, now that I'm here on strike as a WGA and DGA member, it was interesting to reference this sequel and the ups and downs of it with what's going on now with technology and being able to duplicate and change things and press of a button potentially.
I mean, here's the thing. This is not a prank whatsoever. Um, I put S Darko in the kind of category of sequel, and to continue the conversation on the ownership and what you owe fellow artists. I kind of put it in the category of like Blair Witch 2 or Shock Treatment, the sequel to Rocky Horror, or
Yeah.
even there's kind of a whole history of sequels that maybe were studio mandated, or
Yeah.
but actually when you look at them and you tell yourself, okay, I'm gonna just not think about my rabid love for the original. I'm gonna just appreciate this for what it is,
Yeah.
and what this filmmaker wanted to make. That's what I love about S Darko, because I think people's kind of hatred is just coming from like, well, I love Donnie Darko so much. And yet there are we're out there. The fans of S Darko are out there, I'm telling you. And yeah, I mean, I almost wanted to do this interview just to kind of like tell you that I actually like this film genuinely. It's not just like a passing interest. It's like a genuine like, damn, this was a really interesting film.
Well, look, art and commerce, right? Art and commerce. Nobody goes into a movie hoping to lose money. And certainly motivation to make a Donnie Darko sequel had something to do with wanting to make money. I mean, the studios certainly wanted to make money. We're not gonna, that's their business, right? That's what they do for a living. We're not gonna hate them for that. The fact that people wanted to make a Donnie Darko sequel and make money is not bad. There's nothing wrong with that. They wanted to make money off Donnie Darko too. The question why wasn't Richard involved is a totally different, which I honestly can't answer. And again, would if he ever wanted to let me know, or I mean, I would be super excited to know. But that's a totally different question than, did the people that made S Darko also love it? We did. I mean, we lived it for a year. We loved that movie. We loved making it. That doesn't mean it was successful. It doesn't mean people should agree with us, or that doesn't mean people can't hate it. And I don't have an attachment to movies after I make them. That's part of the birthing process. And you let your child go in the world. You do your best to raise a good child, and you let them go. And sometimes they end up on meth, and sometimes they end up president of the United States. And sometimes it could be the same kid. But look, I sort of say we loved making it. It was we were passionate about it. It was we never made it to make money. We never, I got paid pennies on it. We made it because we thought we were doing something great, and we all believed in it. From Elizabeth Berkley's incredible performance to John Hawkes to all of us sitting outside on the weekends playing music together. I mean, we loved making it. So there was never a cash out attitude from anyone involved on the creative side. That might be something worth mentioning. No one was like, hey, let's make a cheap sequel and make a quick buck out of it. We thought we were doing something great, and maybe that's the tragedy in it, but yeah, our intentions were always to honor the original, to tell a story within the Darko universe that was unique and special to Samantha, and to add another chapter to a sort of beloved narrative. And I don't think we were successful necessarily on any of those fronts, but that's what our starting point was.
But sometimes, I don't know, for me, as somebody who is very into the experimental and avant-garde world of cinema, I don't need something to be totally successful in order for me to actually be able to take away something that is my own from it, which is kind of how I feel about S. Darko.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what is success? Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. And what really, I mean, I went down the rabbit hole a couple times, to be totally honest. I went and like back when IMDb used to have all like the user reviews and stuff like that. I think it's changed now, but I went down and read like, and it seems like there was a lot of, again, back in when this movie was released, the internet was predominantly male, predominantly young, predominantly tech oriented. It has since changed, right? It's now we're in, um, it's changed. But I think when you look at the reactions, the user reviews and stuff like that, there was a pretty strong female reaction that was fairly positive. And I got some boost from that. That was kind of cool. But you're right. The crazy thing about it was like it was doomed. It was doomed from the announcement, right? I mean, it was just one of those things, and that's it's so interesting to look at it as a time capsule. It was reviled, as you said, from the day that people announced it was even happening, which is funny because I know, and maybe I'm making this, maybe I'm imagining this. Didn't Richard tease that he was maybe going back into doing his own sequel at some point, and there was this like, did that happen, or did I
Yeah,
make that up?
so okay, so what I'll say is I sort of know Richard Kelly. I've
Yeah.
interviewed him, I've spent some time with him, and I'm interviewing him again. And
Oh no,
what I
cool.
know what I know about him is he is extremely specific and vision oriented about what he's doing. And he's not going to let anyone tell him how or what to make, and he has very high ambitions, and he hasn't made a movie in 13 years, god knows why. But
Yeah.
um yes, he did say he wanted to continue Donnie Darko in some capacity. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but
Wow.
yeah,
Pretty
I would
so
say
awesome, right?
probably he didn't want to be involved because he doesn't want to be told what to do.
Well, I don't think he would be told what to do, right? I mean, it all depends on budget, but I mean, I obviously can't speak for him. I know what I tried to, but I would be the first person to buy a ticket. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. um Yeah, I mean, he's a fascinating director and like such a great person.
Yeah.
But I would love to ask him about S. Darko. I don't know what he'll say.
Yeah, that'd be funny. I'd like to be a fly on the wall for that one too.
Yeah, I'll be the mediator.
Well, I'd love him to come direct Star Trek for me. That would be awesome.
Oh my God, yeah.
I'm such a fan of his, and always
Yeah,
have
so
been.
you're working on that nowadays. So what are you working on now?
So yeah, I mean, like I said, so S. Darko, my movie career was climbing up, and then that kind of pushed me on the pause button uh, to say the least. And I did make a couple movies after that. I made Street Kings, Motor City, and made this movie, Meeting Evil, a novel I adapted with Sam Jackson. But mostly starting in 2007, my career went into TV. And I'm what's called a producing director. So this would probably make some of the auteur guys like Richard vomit. So my job is to sort of take a TV show, right? And I'll direct the premiere and the finale, or the mid-season finale, or I'll direct a number of key episodes. Then I hire the rest of the directors, and I sort of create the visual language, protect it, um, enhance it, develop it, expand it. and that's sort of my job. So I'm like the number 2 guy on a TV show. My boss is always the showrunner, the writer showrunner. Right now, it's Akiva Goldsman, and he stays in LA or New York, and then I go to Toronto and I make the show, and hire the directors and all that stuff. So that's what I do. And I've been doing that now for quite a while. I've been really lucky to be on kind of 4 big hit shows in a row, all of them genre. I did Warehouse 13, which was a sort of magical realist show. Then I did Person of Interest in New York with Jonah Nolan, J.J. Abrams, which was a sort of AI sort of sci-fi show. Then I did The Magicians for 5 years. In Vancouver, again with another magical realist fantasy show, and then that got me onto Star Trek. So that's what I do. We have 2 completed seasons. Both of those seasons have aired, and it's awesome. In my sort of the holy trinity of genre, it's horror at the bottom, which is always my core and my base, and that's what I got my start in. And I was a Fangoria guy and all that stuff, and then just above horror, you start playing with fantasy, and your budgets get bigger. You start messing with creature effects, a little bit of visual effects, but it's still really grounded sort of storytelling. And then, of course, at the top of the pyramid is science fiction, and that's when you're playing with big budgets and world building and VFX, and we have an AR wall on Star Trek, and so with all the fun bells and whistles, and in some ways more sort of serious storytelling, but take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, so that's what I do, so I hire the directors for Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, and I directed the premiere this year, and so continue doing that. I don't really have any film projects right now even developing. I have a whole bunch of other TV projects developing, all genre and science fiction. So I really, my career has sort of really moved out of film and into TV, about 20 years ago.
So interesting. I mean, that sounds awesome. And I've spoken to a few directors who, are in self-proclaimed director's jail and haven't made a film in a while, and just, work elsewhere in the industry. And yeah, I mean, that sounds fantastic.
It is fantastic. And again, especially, being a writer, TV is also a writer's medium. So it's great being a writer as well as a director, and being on set and be able to work with the writer hand in hand and one-on-one, and so that's I get to flex that muscle a little bit as well too. So yeah, it's fun, and the show's a hit, and so it's a great job, and at least until this writer strike happened, which we were about a week away from shooting season 3, and we all got shut down. So I've been unemployed since May, late May, and just waiting for the strike to end and go back up to Toronto and start season 3.
So yeah, I mean, that's basically all I have. Do you have any parting words about S. Darko that you want the listeners to know?
It was an honor to do, and I know it wasn't wholly successful, but I don't have any regrets about doing it. I know I did my best for what I had to give at the time, and it was super fun making it, and it came from a good place in my heart, and out of a lot of love and admiration for the original film, and we did our best, and so hopefully people that like it don't have to feel bad about liking it, and for the people who hate it, they're justified too, so power to them.
So that is Chris Fisher. I hope maybe you will go out and give S. Darko a try, even if you don't really like it. It's an interesting film. So I have a bunch of really cool guests lined up, and you can follow me on Instagram at evian.official or on Twitter at junketpod. Really hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you on the next one.